When I married Alexander, I knew it would be for life. From the moment we met, he was a very attentive and loving man to me. As time went by, we became closer and the flame of passion rose between us, accompanying us for the 20 years we have been together. However, for a few months now, it seems that flame has left us. Things in our bedroom had cooled down and neither of us really knew why. "Don't you find me attractive anymore?" I asked. "Of course I find you attractive. You are the most beautiful woman in the world, Mary." "It's not that, it's just that. Something is missing," she replied. At the suggestion of a mutual friend, we started going to couples therapy, and the first thing the specialist advised us to do was to be completely transparent with each other, even in matters of intimacy. We were both willing to do whatever it took to save our marriage, so one day we sat down to talk about our tastes, preferences, and desires in order to make them come true. I consider myself a pretty average woman in that respect. I'm not very creative. I just enjoy spending good times with my husband and experiencing the pleasures of nature. But he, on the other hand, had a desire that he had kept secret throughout our relationship, and that had he not confessed it to me at that time, I would never have imagined it. "I would like to see you do it with others, of course. If you are willing, I would never force you to do something you don't want to do," he said. That proposal kept going around in my mind for weeks. I was raised in a very traditional and conservative family, where marriage functions as a kind of sacred temple, and it would be unthinkable for a wife to do something like that. On the other hand, I have to admit that the idea had sparked a spark of curiosity in me. I was embarrassed to discuss it with my girlfriends, so I resorted to what most people do when they want to find out about something these days. I looked it up on the internet. I found all kinds of blogs, chat rooms, and forums where people shared their intimate experiences. In those virtual spaces, there was everything, both single and married with all kinds of preferences. I spent several hours reading what people posted there, reviewing the comments and opinions of other users, and I was surprised at how open they were on every topic. Then I began to think that maybe the limitations and judgments were only inside my head. After all, no one would have to know more than my husband. The next day at dinner, I decided to bring up this subject when I was having a conversation with Alexander. "So, this fantasy of yours, if I agreed, what would it be like?" I asked. "Well, you could set whatever conditions you want," he said. "What I have thought is that we choose men at random who do not know us at all and are not related to our family or friends to avoid rumors," I explained. "And after the meeting, we would never see them again." "What do you think?" he added. "It seems sensible to me, and where will we get people who are willing to participate in something like this?" I inquired. "I know a place on the internet," he replied. The rest of the dinner we kept quiet. In my head, I was imagining all kinds of situations related to Alexander's fantasy, and I knew that, most probably, his silence was because he was imagining the same thing. Finally, I dared to ask him what had been on my mind for days. "May I know why that situation would excite you so much?" I said. "I don't know. I think it has a certain appeal for me to see you being another hunter's prey for a change. I think you might enjoy it too." He replied, and I could tell he was a little excited to tell me. At that moment, as I looked at his face, all the good times we spent together came to my mind, the times when I needed his support, and he was always there. Alexander has been a good man to me in every way and an excellent husband. While his proposal was unexpected to me, I also had to give him credit for being faithful to our relationship all along. I mean, he could have gotten someone else to give him what he was looking for. Instead, he preferred to hold back all this time so as not to fail me, and I think that has a lot of merit. That night, I went to bed with that idea in mind, and after a lot of tossing and turning, I finally fell asleep. The next day, I decided I had an answer. If I had to be with other men to save our marriage, then I was willing to do it. By the time I got out of bed, Alexander was already at work, so I sent him a text message, hoping to brighten his day. "Hi, honey, I've made up my mind about your proposal. Bring wine tonight to celebrate." I spent the rest of the day surfing the internet to soak up all the information I could get on the subject. And in fact, I did get some useful information that I decided to put into practice. For example, in one forum, they recommended that girls who wanted to venture into this type of experience should ask for recent medical examinations of the escorts to ensure their safety. I was definitely going to do that too. On another forum, they recommended that if you didn't feel very confident in the first few encounters, to wear a mask or something that would make you believe yourself to be someone else or an act. It seemed like a good idea, so I made a note of the supplies I was going to need and wrote one of those down on the list. When Alexander came home for dinner, I told him that I had decided to accommodate his request with the sole intention of saving our marriage. "Are you serious?" "Really, Mary, I don't know what to say." I'm extremely excited, he said, and showered my face with kisses. Well, I wouldn't want this to drag on too long either. I'll agree to a couple of encounters with strangers, but then I want us to rekindle things between the two of us and only the two of us. I warned him, and he agreed. That same night, we accessed that site on the internet that Alexander had told me about. It was a sort of directory where people advertised to participate in casual encounters with strangers. In other words, like the classifieds page in the newspaper, but for intimate things and not for employment. I was impressed with the offers people posted. About half of the users were requesting participants for their fantasies, while the other half were offering themselves for any kind of encounter. Alexander started writing our ad. "Wanted man over 40 to participate in a casual meeting with my wife. Requirement, current blood tests and good looks." He pressed the submit button, and our application appeared next to those already posted on the site. Just a few minutes later, applications started arriving on Alexander's computer. Interested users were sending their photos with greetings to apply. This is unbelievable. People are interested in this kind of thing without asking for anything in return. I asked. "Pleasure is the reward," Alexander told me. Then I understood that this world was much wider and more open than my mind could ever imagine. As it was already late, we went to bed. But I just tossed and turned in bed. I couldn't sleep, thinking of dark silhouettes coming to sleep with me. I tried breathing exercises to calm my mind and told myself that the fear was only because it was a new experience for me. I grabbed my cell phone and made a query on the forums I had been reading earlier, looking for comfort. Have any of you ever felt fear before doing it with strangers? I want to make my husband happy, but I don't know if I'm ready for this. I immediately started getting comments from other women around the world. It's normal, but do it on your own terms. If you don't feel safe, don't do it, but I recommend that you don't say no until you've tried it. I felt the same as you at first, but then I enjoyed it so much that those feelings disappeared completely. I decided that I would have to live my own experience, closed the chat, and went to sleep. The next day, we chose 3 candidates we thought were the best among the available options. To me, they looked attractive and met the conditions, so we arranged to meet the first one at a hotel that was far from our home and work, so as not to meet anyone we knew. On the day of the meeting, Alexander and I arrived together at the hotel and asked for a room. Then we waited until someone knocked on the door. Alexander got up and opened it. In front of us was the guy in the first picture. He was a tall, thin, Caucasian man with gray hair. He wore glasses and a formal suit. He looked like a lawyer. He introduced himself as James, but that could have been a fake name. I put on my mask and with it convinced myself that I would be playing the role of a burlesque diva. That encounter lasted about half an hour. Alexander made sure that I felt comfortable at all times. And this James guy looked like he already had experience in the business because he didn't push me at all. Instead, he gave himself to everything we asked of him. The dim lights made my job much easier. I felt more confident under that mask, and I decided to give Alexander my best performance. As soon as I had my first kiss with James, I let him take control of things and just let myself drift like a leaf in the wind. If I had to describe the loving way of the partner we chose, I would say he was full of fire. His movements and his words enveloped me in a gale of intense flames among which I played with the risk of getting burned while enjoying the sensation of warmth that enveloped me. I have to admit, I liked it, and the fact that Alexander had been present only made the sensations even more intense. So as soon as we left that place, I told him that we could arrange to meet the next pick. I don't know how to explain it to you, but after that event, I felt much more in love with Alexander. In turn, as a woman, I felt more attractive and as if there was no longer a single thing in the world that I could not do. I couldn't tell you why that had that effect on me, but then I remembered the comments of other women on the forum, and I identified with them. By the time we arranged to meet the second man, I was feeling more anxious and less nervous. What I felt was no longer fear, it was excitement to find myself again in that situation that I had liked before. The meeting was in the same place as the previous one. Alexander and I arrived earlier. When we opened the door at the knock, Robert appeared in front of us. He was the same height as Alexander, his cinnamon-colored skin, dark eyes and curly hair attracted me immediately. As he approached, I was intoxicated by his perfume. His scent was sweet and woody, his breath was fresh, and I loved to smell it. His way of loving was not like fire. I would say Robert loved with the fluidity and timeless force of water. His arms were strong. He wrapped them around me as we melted into kisses and caresses that flowed with the grace of a river on its way to the sea. I reached the top a couple of times before unraveling at his side, and I could tell that Alexander had enjoyed this encounter much more than the last, as had I, who was getting used to it. By the time it was time to meet the third selectee, I no longer needed to wear the mask. There was a knock on the door. I opened it and took him by the hand to start the action. His name was Joseph, a thin, light-skinned man with gray eyes. He looked like something out of a fairy tale, the ideal prototype of any woman my age. As soon as I saw him, I was thrilled, and I knew I would thoroughly enjoy the next half hour at his side. His way of loving, I related it to the wind, but not just any wind. Joseph was one of those whirlwinds that accompany storms with clouds as gray as his eyes. I lost myself in those eyes as he kissed me. Being with him revolutionized my world at that moment. The vigor of his movements and the stupor of his masculinity, in just the right doses to combine with my skin-deep femininity, were the formula for a perfect storm. I felt in the air, in his air, while he was a whirlwind, and I just let myself go. That encounter was as or more intense than the previous ones. Each of those men, in his own way, knew how to take me by the hand to the highest point, and then I let go in free fall. I felt alive, full and happy. It's been a couple of weeks since everything I'm telling you happened. Since then, Alexander and I take every chance we get to evoke the memories of those encounters and relive or recreate them in our bedroom. In the end, I have gotten my way because my relationship with Alexander is much stronger than ever. I see him happy, and now I have felt again that spark that for a moment was almost extinguished between us. I returned to the internet forums to write the testimonies of my encounters because I know that other women may find them useful, as I have found some of the anecdotes previously published by other users. Remembering what I did with each of these men is almost like living it all over again, and I enjoy it very much. James, Robert, and Joseph, if those were even their real names, we never saw them again. but I had their images in my memories, and you have no idea how helpful they are when I am alone. While I was writing on the forum, another man replied to our request. I have agreed to meet him at the same hotel as always, room 34, and I can't wait to experience that again. If anyone hearing this is in the same situation I was in, I can only tell you to go with your gut. You may be surprised.